Committee, August 6th, 2020. And Chuck, I just wanted to let you know that Ms. Metzger has walked into the room, so she's here with us. She just walked in now behind me.
Linda Metzger, you should sit here.
And then I did not hear anything from Ms. Bloomfield. That's the only other thing I needed to tell you.
Okay. Does Ms. Bloomfield know that she should contact the county administrator or the chairman of the particular committee as to when she cannot attend a meeting?
Well, she did contact us about the one of being late yesterday, so I would think that she does, sir, but I don't know what's going on today.
All right, thank you.
And I have my roll call sheets for the action items.
Okay. Are we ready, Mike?
We are ready, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I call the Land Use and Development Committee to action. The first item on the agenda is consideration of the July 2nd, 2020 minutes. Can I have a motion to approve? Motion by member Went, second by member Chung. Any discussions, corrections, additions to the minutes? All right, seeing none. Do I have to do roll call vote? So what I?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
All right, are you gonna do it?
Yes, sir. I can do
All
that.
right, thanks, Mike.
Member Woolrab. Aye. Member Went.
Yes.
Member Beard.
Yes.
Member Bloomfield is not here. Member Chung.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Wachinski.
Yes.
Chairman Erickson, will you be voting?
Yes, I'll be voting on everything.
Okay, and your vote on this one?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the bills. I have a letter here from the auditor approving the bills. I have bills in the amount of $1,415.59. Can I have a motion to approve? A motion by member Went, a second by member Beard. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, let's take a roll call.
Member Woolrab. Aye. Member Went.
Yes.
Member Beard.
Yes.
Member Chung.
Yes.
Member Wachinski.
Yes.
Chairman Erickson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I have any appearances by members of the public?
Chairman, this is Camille. No, you do not.
All right, thank you. All right, the first item for action is item 5A. Apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Request by Rex Topke for a waiver of preliminary plan requirements and approval of one lot subdivision final plat for the Topke's Farm subdivision. And can I have a motion to approve? Motion by member Wentz, second by member Waczynski. Phil, do you want to discuss that?
Yes, this is a one lot subdivision, as you've explained. There's a plat map attached to this property showing where this property is located in Dry Grove Township on West Twin Grove Road. The applicant is proposing to set the house aside from the farm tract. There's an existing house that's been there for many years. It's the old house that Mr. Tepke, who is present, grew up in, but has since moved away and no longer lives there. And now they would like to sell this house separate from the farm tract. The County Highway Department has reviewed this, and the county or the Dry Grove Township Road Commissioner has issued a plat access certificate, and the County Health Department has signed off on this one lot subdivision as well. And Mr. Rex Tepke, he's the trustee, successor trustee of the trust who owns this property, He, along with members of his family, are the owners of this trust. He can answer any questions and is here to do that. And I'm available also to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, do I have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I guess we'll vote. Vote on item 5A.
Member Woolrab,
Aye.
Member Went,
Yes.
Member Beard,
Yes.
Member Chung,
Yes.
Member Wachinski,
Yes.
Chairman Erickson.
Yes. All right, the next item. I'm sorry, Phil, did you want to say something? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Tripke, this will go to the county board for their meeting on August 18th, and you can call us on the 19th in the morning and find out what happened. You do not need to attend this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 6A, update on the dusty roads in Chenoa Township. Is the county administrator, Phil, going to address that, or who is going to address that one?
Good afternoon, Chairman. I believe that Phil will be addressing that. Ms. Vasquez, are you up here to address that as well?
They did ask me questions. so
And-
they have to-
And Civil States Attorney Vasquez is here as well. She's going to take over the podium to answer any questions or expound if needed. So do excuse me.
All right, I'll start out by saying, does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to make? All right, I'll go ahead and let Assistant State's Attorney Vasquez go ahead and discuss what her opinion was and whatever else she feels is pertinent to the subject matter.
So last time we were here, there was a question about what the county can do to enforce the road use agreements. After having looked at both of the agreements for McLean County and between the wind farm and Chenoa and the wind farm, they each have their own separate full agreements by themselves. So the Chenoa Township agreement does contain some provisions that would allow Chenoa to, or any of the townships, they're pretty much identical, to enforce their agreement if they're unsatisfied with the way the mitigation for the dust is going. There is a provision in ours when it says that is on a county road, our county engineer should basically be the person that decides if the mitigation is good enough. In their township agreement, it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily designate a person like it does for us, but it does say it's up to the township to decide if they're going to enforce it.
Doesn't know he's muted.
I'm
Chuck,
sorry.
I think you might still be muted.
I am muted. Keep me quiet for long, though. Anyway, any questions of Ms. Vasquez? Member Beard, go ahead.
Well, one comment and one question. I guess my comment, and this was something I think we discussed previously, is that because of this experience, on future projects like this, where you have a set of agreements between the county, and we've got resources to better enforce those agreements, and you have agreements with townships, which it sounds like are frequently, maybe don't have attorneys or don't have extensive highway staffs beyond, one or two people. I would be supportive of the idea of putting in disclaimers or statements in our agreement that that ensure township agreements are also being followed. So it still affects the residents of McLean County. So even if it's not specifically recoverable in this instance, and we're going to do what we do in this case, but in future instances, that would be something I would be supportive of seeing, so that if a company breaks all their township agreements and really steps all over townships, that by itself puts them out of alignment with the agreement we had. My other comment was, I was really hoping, and maybe this will come in a minute, but what is a status update over the last month? And I don't know if Mr. Dick would provide that. Just how are things going?
The wet weather has improved the dust situation tremendously, and the completion of all the turbine bases has improved the situation. So we do not have we have no more concrete trucks running up and down the roads. In meetings that Jerry Stokes had with the contractor and with the road commissioners, the Chenoa Township Road Commissioner indicated that things are going much better now. I have received a complaint only having to do with escort vehicles that escort some of the turbine parts up and down the township roads. In the last 2 weeks, I have not received any complaints about dust. The contractor appears to have improved. When people complain about dust, they get on it a little quicker than they have been. And they have this material that they put down that is worked on from Mr. Prock now, that puts some kind of a material on the road that keeps the dust down for several days at a time versus just several hours with water. But they've also had 3 to 5 trucks on the road most of the time.
Any other questions? Member Wolrab?
Lori, you're muted.
My apologies there. I clicked on something I shouldn't have. I was wondering, since Ms. Metzger is present, if what you're hearing seems to conform to what you already may have heard, since you're out there in the district. I did drive out there myself, actually, and could see where there definitely is a potential on those gravel roads, and it was hot and dusty the day I went out there. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
May I, Chairman?
Yes, if I can find my mic here. Yes, go ahead.
I was out there a week ago today and had conversations with residents as well as the road commissioner of Chenoa Township, which is Mr. Killian. I think what Mr. Dix said is accurate, that they are seeing, if they have complaints, that there's a little bit more action on the part of the company to address those issues, but again, it's a complaint. And so we shouldn't have to have complaints. They should be just doing it. But that, at least we're seeing some. At the Transportation Committee on Tuesday, my colleague, Mr. Thompson, asked the same question that Member Wolrab is asking. And Jerry Stokes said, yes, it seems to be better. And his question then was, is it better because there's less traffic or they took care of it? And he said, because there's less traffic. So, again, not letting the wind company off the hook there. As I was talking to the road commissioner, he did give me, they have notice of violations. I have a copy of one. They can fine the wind company for violations of failure for permits, road closure exceeding 3 hours, failure to notify of a road closure, traffic control deficiencies, use of non-construction roads, and failure to remediate road hazard. And apparently the Lexington Township Road Commissioner has $80,000 worth of fines that have never been addressed and that the company is not addressing. So here we are again with a total neglect or ignoring of these things. So they are going to have to get their attorney then to file. They apparently, I don't know if they have an escrow or a letter of credit. I can't remember which one, but they're going to have to go and try to execute that because the company is not paying. And Mr. Killian told me he has some too. He didn't tell me how much, but he did tell me that Lexington Township has over $80,000 in fines that have not been paid. So I think what Mr. Beard said, and if I can ask you, in future agreements, both the county agreement, can we make a tie between those agreements with the townships, that if they are not abiding by those, that the county can pull building permits and stop any building until they remediate the issues that exist that they're ignoring.
Absolutely. That's something that could be added to any kind of agreement that we have. There is an area of law about third-party beneficiaries. So if you're a direct beneficiary for a contract, even though you're not the party, if that's the intention, you could potentially, depending on circumstances, have standing to enforce the contract because you're a direct beneficiary. In this instance, in the contracts that were executed, we don't have that standing, but we can create something in the future that could allow us to do that if we wanted to.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The only other thing is I did get a couple of photographs from on a county road that had been, they were bringing the big turbine. I don't think they were the nacelles. I think they were the blades, and it was wet, obviously. So there was damage to a county road. It was County Road 8, and huge drop-offs. And so I sent that picture to Jerry in the morning. I received it in the evening, and I will say he addressed it immediately, went out there and got that taken care of. So it's never really a problem with our county roads. You know, there may be problems that exist, but then again, you know, the citizens are policing even the county roads for us. And that's just, you know, these violators know they did that. They know they went off the road. They know they made big holes along the side of the road that are dangerous, and they move on and ignore it. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that continue. It is going to get better, but, and we knew it would, but that shouldn't let them off the hook. Because what goes on is they ignore, and finally it gets better because over time the trucks aren't around. So, but thank you, Member Woolrap, for asking for my insight. I appreciate that, and that's all I have to share.
And to summarize, I think the thought is that the language would be a violation of the county township agreement is a violation of the, violation of the township agreement is a violation of the county agreement. I think that's what the language is that we're looking for. So the county has some authority to go in there and the county should choose to do so. I guess it's basis, but I guess that's kind of what we were looking at. Wanting to know if that's a possibility, but I see member Went has his hand up, so go ahead.
Well, what I was wondering is if they damage the county road, can't they be cited for that?
Or county administrator, state's attorney Vasquez, somebody.
Yes, the county engineer will see that it's fixed. And I presume that's what Ms. Metzger was talking about. If the applicant doesn't fix it, the county will fix it and bill them for it.
Okay, that's what I was just wondering if they could be cited though for a violation or something if they damage our road so that maybe you can enforce it with a citation.
Well, the agreement that we have includes provisions on how to enforce it. We don't have citations included in the agreement. So my first thought would be to enforce the agreement, which means that exactly as Mr. Dick just said, if they don't fix it, we can fix it, but then bill them for it too. And we also have provisions in there that we could go above and beyond that if we needed to, if it were necessary.
My question is, let's say that we have another wind farm come before us and we don't have that type of provision in any agreement. Can the county board add that into the agreement at the county board meeting?
Every agreement and contract has to be approved, the normal process. So certainly that can be rejected or amended or added in the process that we have already in place.
My thought is if we had another agreement come through, even if someone was just amending an old agreement or something, that if we wanted to add it at that time, I mean, we could put a violation of the township agreement as a violation of the county agreement. I just want to know when would be the opportune time to put those in there. I suppose at the ZBA, but what if it's past the ZBA and it's at the county board? I assume the county board could ask for an amendment to put that in there then. Would that be correct?
Certainly, that's something that can happen.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, the county agreement, road agreement would go through transportation. So that's where that would be caught.
Okay, so if that type of provision were going to be added in there, it should be added in at the transportation committee meeting or at the land use committee meeting?
The road use agreement for the county goes through transportation and then to the county board.
Okay, so it's something that transportation would have to be looking at too. Are you catching that, Ms. Metzger, that, they should catch it there too? Member Beard, did you want to say something?
Well, right now it's about transportation, but is that always the case? I'm thinking like, what if there's a noise or any number of things where we have an agreement that has township components and county components. If there's gross negligence or complete violations on those township sides, I think what we're saying is we'd like the ability to press pause or to have to review that from the county side and potentially take action. So if it is transportation, that's great. And but I don't know. I don't know if that would be the only type of instance that the only type of township agreement that would exist. I don't know.
The only township agreement I was aware of that Invenergy proposed to White Oak Township had to do with an easement over a cemetery, which we didn't give them. But if we would have and they didn't pay, then that could potentially be something too, I guess. I'm not sure. I have not seen any township agreements so far other than road. But I think you make a good point, Member Beard.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So let's say a company comes in and blows up a township cemetery, and we're like, time out. Would we do that through the transportation committee, or is that just part of the overall zoning the overall agreement that we have as a county. That might be a question for Ms. Vasquez then.
I guess it would depend really on where the agreement originated and what the provisions are. And I don't really know that hypothetical where it would fall off the top of my head, but we would analyze it just like we do every month with the agenda and figure out where it would go most appropriately, knowing that ultimately it would still have to go through the county board.
Yeah, I think that we're going to be, somebody ought to be looking for those even through transportation or through land use, that I think there's some concern about it, that, you know, and possibly getting into our agreements that a violation of the township agreement is a violation of the county agreement. So it gives the county some authority to go in there and do something when the townships may not have the resources. But once again, that would be a case by case basis. It wouldn't be an absolute. I mean, if the county decided not to do anything, I suppose the county could. That would be true. Ms. Vasquez, I mean, my question would be, in this present situation, let's say the agreement actually did say that the county has the ability to enforce it. If the county could choose not to enforce it, right? I mean, the county could choose yes or no.
Right. I guess it would really.
Decision would it be made at the committee level? Would it be made by the county administrator? Who would it be made by the transportation committee to do that enforcement?
I guess it would depend on what level of enforcement we wanted to pursue. If it took getting a hold of the county engineer to go talk to people, go out there and show them the contract and say, look, you need to do this, this, and this. Here's the letter that says it. That's one level of that. If we wanted to go further than that, some reason, you know, maybe we wanted to file a lawsuit against them for a breach of contract or something, we'd have a different level of involvement, I think, from the committee and the county board.
What about pulling a building permit? Who would be who could make that happen? Because that would stop any building, any movement. So who would be responsible for that?
I would ask Mr. Dick about the permits. I know in this case, I did look at the special use permit for these roads, and the thing that the special use permit said was that it needs to have a road use agreement for us and a road use agreement for every township that it has, and that was the only provision. So the permit was given with the idea that they are going to get the agreements with each place that they need to. And they did get the agreements. Now we're just a question of enforcing those agreements. So having the agreement or not having the agreement is not the same as whether or not we can enforce it. So I don't know about pulling the building agreements, but I think that's a process that I'm sure is already in place that Mr. Dick might be able to.
When could you pull a building permit, Mr. Dick? What would be a reason you could do that currently?
Before we issued a permit, you probably remember all the stipulations that were attached to the special use. They have to fulfill all those requirements before we issue a building permit. Now, one of the things that we're running into now has to do with the dust control of this situation, which has never quite been so bad as it has been for these last two wind farms, the EDP renewables and this Invenergy one. And I think that's partly because we have not had them pulverize the roads before they run all this construction traffic on them. So what we're proposing to do in the future is not allow them to pulverize the roads until after construction is complete. They're pulverizing the roads so that they can prepare the base with all the truck traffic and vehicle traffic on it, packing it down so that then when they rebuild the roads after the construction is complete, it's got a better base to it. But that is a problem given what we've seen on these two wind farms. So what I'm proposing in the future, if we ever have any other wind farms, is that they not be allowed to pulverize the roads in advance so we wouldn't have this dust control issue. In answer to your question of when you could pull that permit, it would have to be on the basis that something that they submitted as one of the conditions was a fraud or was inaccurate or something like that. But just because they violate the road use agreement wouldn't necessarily mean that we could pull the permit.
Could we add that to pull the permit for not following the road agreement? It isn't in there now, but why could we not add it?
So any special use permit is drafted individually, and that would be something that, if whatever committee we're faced with, could address that, I suppose.
I want member Went and member Woolrab to know I see their hands, but I'll get to you. I do see them. My question though still goes back to that. I mean, if we say a violation of the township agreement is a violation of the county agreement, and let's say the county disagrees with the township commissioner, who makes the decision of the violation? I mean, that's I think somehow we're going to have to figure that out if we're going to put that in there.
Right.
Decision as to who, I mean, are we bound by what the town, if we decided to do that? I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm just saying it's just like, who makes that decision? Because I think it is important that we kind of flesh that out a little bit too, as to who makes that decision when it's a violation. Because if we just say it's the township commissioner, does the county want to give that authority? If it's the county, then does the county want to be in that business? I mean, that's kind of the thing I'm concerned about. So as we continue to go forward on this, I would ask you to think about that, because I don't know that we have the answer for that today. But I mean, as we think about that, what would be our enforcement mechanism? Make that decision. And so I want to go back. I think member Woolrab had her hand up first, and then I'll go to member Went.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. If we have another one of these, and would we start with proactively contacting the township folks about it and asking them to make sure they have the right provision in their agreement, or would we just put one in our own road agreement and say it covers the township? Or how, what would that process look like?
Is that a question for me? I'm happy to answer it. It's hard to tell where everyone's looking. They're all looking at the same place. That would be something that would take collaboration for sure. We have copies of everything because part of that process was to make sure that we have copies of that to prove that they had done it to get their permit. Putting it in there, that would be a cooperative thing to say, Chinoa Township is allowing us to basically have standing to enforce their contract if they wanted us to, or if we wanted to, depending on how it was worded, of the enforcement provision of the steps of what needs to happen. But that would definitely be collaborative at that point in time. And it would take collaboration with every township who needed to have that. And it would change our process slightly, because right now, all it says is that at least for this particular instance, everyone has their own agreements. We know about it. We have copies because now here's your special use permit. You fulfilled this check mark as what you need to do. But we weren't involved necessarily in doing that, making those contracts happen.
The creation of these road use agreements takes place with the townships apart from the county engineer. They do rely on the county engineer for advice periodically, but they have their own attorney involved in writing these road use agreements. The county road use agreement is coordinated through the transportation committee. But I think in terms of enforcing the township road use agreement is going to have to be handled, I would suggest not through the land use committee, that it would be handled through the transportation committee. But I think Assistant State's Attorney Vasquez is correct. The township commissioners don't necessarily want the county engineer to tell them how they should draft their ordinance. And there used to be a consistent attorney that they would use. And so their road use agreements were more consistent, but this time they had a different attorney, and they arranged a different deal. But I think that getting back to whether or not you wanted to pull their construction permit, what we do is we make sure that those turbines are put in the right location. They're not too close to a house. They're not too close to a road. They're not in violation of their sound agreements. They meet all the other requirements. But when it comes to the roads, they're supposed to arrange that through their township road agreement and through the county road agreement. And all those road issues are kind of the experts in that are the county engineer, and we rely on them to do that part of it. So I think that enforcement of the township road agreement may be a little bit more complicated than what we want to deal with. I think the transportation committee will want to deal with that. But I think what we want to deal with is that we don't want all these dusty road complaints anymore. So it's my opinion that we're going to force these folks to not have dusty roads when all these concrete trucks are driving up and down them.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think that sounds good there, Phil. If you can do something mechanical on that end. But I would suggest that the next time we have one of these, that we proactively reach out to all the township folks and say, if you want us to help you enforce these in the future, please talk to us about some language that you can put in your agreement with them, and they can take it or leave it, but I would think it would be in their best interest, for all the reasons we've heard earlier, for them to want a provision like that. But if they don't, then they don't, and we don't have to enforce anything for them. Thanks.
Your hand up, Member Metzger, but I want to get back to Member Wendt. Member Wendt, did you have something?
Well, I had two things. One, is there anything we can do to help the township collect those fines at $80,000? And the second thing is there any way that we can put in our special use or any of these types of things that on these wind farms that they have to be current on, like any citations that they get issued? But I'd like to know if we can help that township to collect those fines that they've given out.
So, my gut reaction, without having to look through and give detailed research on this topic, is that if it's an ordinance or a fine from the township, then they have the jurisdiction to enforce it. And I'm not sure what we could do. But like I said, I haven't looked into this question deeply, but I could do that if that's something that you want me to do.
Member Metzger. Or Member Wendt, did you still have something? Go ahead.
Well, I just, like somebody that runs a bar or something like that, if they're in violation of thing and haven't paid their fines, you can yank their license. Now, these special use operations, is there any way we can do that so that we can force them to take care of any violations that they, I don't know if that's, I know bars that can happen. So, all right, thank you much.
Member Metzger.
Yes, I do want to make a comment about Mr. Dick's comment about not pulverizing the roads. They did not pulverize the roads in White Oak Township, and we have a mess. Because what's happened is they pulverized the roads so those big trucks will pack that, they will make a heavier base when you expand the roads. So what they did before, they went in and made the roads wider, but they didn't pack it down. So now the road is disintegrating, that 2 feet on each side of the road is disintegrating. So instead of having that 16-foot road, the center is 12 and the sides are falling apart because we didn't have people driving on this base. So the thought of saying, oh, you can't pulverize the road, I think is wrong. And I don't think that it's up to our person in the land in the zoning office to say that we can't do that, because in White Oak Township, our roads are not very good, and it's because they took the crown out and they just put asphalt on it. And they said they had it nice and packed in, but it didn't get packed in. So we've got issues. So I don't think that it's up to somebody in the zoning office to tell our road commissioners how to manage those roads correctly. Now, does it cause problems? Absolutely. However, we wouldn't have these problems in the first place if the company would have done what they said they were supposed to do in the contract. Also, I do want to thank Member Woolrab for taking the time to go out and drive her car or whatever vehicle she had, because it is a mess to go out there and it is very time consuming. And I appreciate you doing that. And my constituents, I did tell them you were out there also, and they were very appreciative. Thank you.
Well, this is just something for the to consider as we going forward as to whether that should be done by transportation. Where do we put these things in? And these are things to watch for as we continue to do these agreements. And so I don't know that we can do anything more today, except that we've discussed it and we've made it clear to the county administrator and to Phil and Assistant State's Attorney Vasquez that these are concerns that we have. And, you know, they're just things that we would like to have addressed in the future, or at least thought through, because I don't think this will be the last wind farm that will come through McLean County. And I don't think that'll be the last time we'll ever come up with this issue again. So, and Member Metzger is tipped off to the idea she should watch for that in transportation as well. When that comes up, as to making sure somebody is looking out for that. Did anybody else have anything else they wanted to say?
Member, Chairman Erickson, I had a comment on one thing that was brought up, and I just wanted to say this special note. If it were a situation where the county is bound, then it would have to be treated as every other contract. So if we are going to insert ourselves into another jurisdiction's agreement, it now becomes our agreement, and it would go through the same process that we would have.
It's an important consideration. First of all, should we do it? Second question is, how do we enforce it? I mean, you know, what's the enforcement mechanism? But that's just something, we can't decide that today. I'm just asking everybody to run that through their minds and think about how we would approach that going into the future when we see the same issue again, or hopefully we don't see it again. But I think the committee wants to be more proactive on it instead of waiting for it to happen. We want to try to see what we can do to address it before it becomes an issue. So, Member Baird, were you raising your hand or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. And just so I don't have to send an email later, I think what I'm hearing is that I think there's consensus amongst the committee to do something, and maybe between Ms. Vasquez and Mr. Dick and our administration, give them a chance to research maybe the best way to do this. To my knowledge, there's nothing coming up immediately, so we have maybe a few months to think about it and structure it the correct way, but to bring back to us as a committee a proposal about how these types of concerns could be addressed, what the best way to do that is, what certain pitfalls are, you know, how to insert ourselves appropriately without taking on more risk, and to ask them to perhaps do that and then come back to us at some point in time in the next few months so we can enact those changes, be able to vote on it, and have those ready to go in instances where there are large entities, whether they're solar, wind, or other large entities that are coming into the rural areas that involve both county and township road use or other agreements.
Because this won't be the last time we see this, I'm certain. But I mean, is there a consensus among the members of the Land Use Committee for the county administrator to look into that? I mean, I see some people shaking their head. I mean, all right, there is. I wouldn't want the county administrator to leave a land use committee meeting without some homework. So,
Thank you.
So There you go. You can thank me for that later.
I just did thank you, Chairman, and really, really a
I
little
guess
bit.
she doesn't have enough to do.
I needed another project, and this is so important, and so many times we've all been trying to problem solve as to what to do, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with Ms. Vasquez on this and getting back to you all, so thank you.
It would be a collaborative effort because I'm not sure we know exactly what to do either, but we're just looking for options as to what, we're looking for ideas as to what our options are. So I think that's where we're at. All right. Anybody else? All right. Next up is the next meeting date is 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. And then 6C, other items of information. Phil, I hate to ask you this, but can you tell us what happened at ZBA on Tuesday? I probably should have sent you an email and asked you to, I was going to ask you this at the meeting, but if you could, I'd appreciate it.
I presume you're asking about that text amendment that was
Yes.
pushed from the land use committee. The zoning board recommended approval. It'll be on the consent agenda for the county board meeting on the 18th.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, does anybody else have any questions or thoughts or? All right. Seeing none, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.